So first, I just want to say thank you to all of you that submitted a question. And as I looked through them, I realized that these are actually going to take really a video apiece to answer and to answer them thoroughly, which they definitely deserve. So if I don't get to yours on this video, hold tight, it's coming. So today's question is, hey Lisa, do you feel the constant anger after betrayal? It has been a year for me. I feel angry and sometimes I take it out on people. It isn't fair to the people who loved me, but I can't be the same person that I was before betrayal. Oh, well, that one makes me think of a lot of things. First of all, of course, you're not going to be the same person that you were before betrayal. And I think sometimes people want us to be the person that we were before because, well, honestly, because that makes them feel more comfortable. But we've changed. We have fundamentally changed, and there is no going back to the way that we were. That being said, that anger, which I know so well, that I'll talk about in a moment, that anger, as you're able to see now, it's something that it harms us if we hold on to it for too long, and especially at any sort of intensity. My own journey with anger after being betrayed was a hard one. I found that it was my most intense emotion, and it was also the one that seemed to stay around the longest. It was the one that I just couldn't shake. And I definitely can understand how that anger can lead you to lashing out at others because, well, it's what we do. That anger needs to come out. And sadly, sometimes it's vented on those that we know aren't going to leave us. And no, it's not fair to them. And so it's up to us to learn how to handle that anger. And I eventually sort of took a three-pronged approach to that. One of the things that I did was I just worked so hard to bleed any energy that I had. Because quite frankly, if I was completely exhausted, I just didn't have it in me to be angry. And I've talked about it before, but during that period, I was running and walking and at the gym and doing yoga and everything really all the time that I wasn't working. Because as long as I was moving forward, I just didn't have that space in that moment to be angry. And then once I was done, I was so exhausted that the anger just really was sort of simmering instead of raging. But obviously you can't do that forever. You can't live that way where you're always running or working. So another part that I realized is when my anger tended to spike, I noticed that it was the worst anytime that I was feeling that things were unfair. Anytime that I felt like he was getting away with things, or anytime that I felt like he had something in his life that I no longer had in mine. And while there's no way to make things fair, that's a losing battle. And so part of it is that acceptance of that you can't go back, that there is no way, there's nothing they can do, there's nothing they can say that's going to make everything okay. But another part of that is actively building your life so that you're not feeling like you're missing elements anymore. And that's what I started to do. Every time that I would feel that anger about something that he had or something that he had done to me, I tried to turn that into an action in my life that would take me closer to where I wanted to be. And an example of that, most of my anger was centered around the financial betrayal. And so one of the times that I remember this happening, I went to go rent an apartment. I had moved out from where I was trying to move out from the friend that I'd been staying with. And I found out that he hadn't paid utility bills that he was supposed to. And because my name was on those back when we used to own a home together, I had to pay a couple $1,000s that I didn't really have in order to get this apartment. And oh, was I raging. And once I figured out how I was going to pay that bill, and I did, what I did next is I intentionally started building my Teachers Pay Teachers account again. I'd had it for years, but it had sat pretty dormant. And I realized I needed to find a way to start building my income. And it was going to be small. I mean, teachers pay teachers. We're talking about maybe an extra $50 to $100 a month. That little bit of money coming in helped to lower the anger that I felt, the rage that I felt about what he had done to me financially, because it gave me some sort of power against it. And so I didn't feel quite so bad. Now I said a three-pronged approach. So those are the first two. The last one is the hardest one. And it's also the most powerful one. It's the one that finally, finally really did let me let go of the anger. Because I can say at this point now, I don't have any of the anger anymore. And this is why. The last part is learning to look at them with compassion. And I know how crazy that sounds. I know how unfair that sounds. And it is unfair. But it's also your ticket to peace. Here's what I eventually did with mine. I saw him. Here's what I eventually did with mine. I started to sort of put some pieces together, and I came up with the story of what I think happened. I'll never know, but this is something that rings true. And a lot of those elements go back to childhood for him. And so I started to see him as this, frankly, traumatized young boy. And the things that happened to him then, the things that he didn't know how to deal with, that he didn't have the coping skills for. And I saw how all of that could have snowballed into what he eventually did. And when I saw that, when I saw him as that hurt young child, instead of this monster that he had become in my eyes, my anger faded. I felt compassion for him. It didn't excuse anything that he had done, but it helped me understand what was inside of him and what may have sent him on this path. So yeah, the anger is real. The anger is justified. Now the anger has its good parts. You can use that as energy. In fact, even though the anger was the hardest thing for me, I also credit it for helping me move on and helping me heal. Because that anger gave me this energy. It was this, I will be damned if I am going to let him take my life. So maybe that's the fourth part of my three-pronged process. Taking that anger and trying to turn it and use it into something that is constructive instead of destructive. So I hope that helps. And again, thank you so much for submitting your question.